The following is a scientific hypothesis and solution set that other people are welcome to test and scientifically validate. Part C, Oswald and Tippett, Smoke and Mirrors. 7 days after Oswald's birth, a declaration of birth in Louisiana was signed by Uncle Harvey F. Oswald. The baby's actual name might have been Cameron Forbes Payne. One of LBJ's buddies, Korth, handled the 1948 divorce of one Marguerite Oswald. Ruth Hyde requested info on Lee Harvey Oswald's family in 1957, and she married Michael Payne in December 1957. Ziger, a Polish Jew, perhaps previously had fled to Argentina. On May Day 1960, the day of the U-2 power spy plane incident, and the day Oswald was seen in both Minsk with black hair and in Moscow, he tells Alec to go home to the USA. Alec was introduced to Marina 10 months later after he still had not returned to the USA. On January 20, 1961, in New Orleans, 10 Ford pickup trucks were purchased by Hispanic Joseph Walton Moore and by Oswald, who was the one with the money. Around January 1962, Alec in the Soviet Union wrote Robert Oswald, whom he may never have met previously. You wouldn't have any clippings from the November 1959 newspapers of Fort Worth, would you? I'm beginning to get interested in just what they did say about me and my trip here. The information might come in handy when I get back. I would hate to come back completely unprepared. Cameron might have been the Oswald in Mexico, but Bishop Phillips circulated a picture of some random guy around November 18th to prevent Cameron from being identified. Michael Payne helped Lee move the iron pipes into the Irving garage in September 1963. Cameron Forbes Payne was always Cameron Payne, but he played the part of Lee Oswald for 12 to 18 years as a youngster and as a young adult. Cameron and Michael were Ruth Forbes' alleged two sons, who both looked a little like Alec. Roscoe Anthony White served in the Marines with Cameron in 1957. Roscoe received orders to join the department, Dallas Police, in September '63 to prepare for his next assignment, the elimination of a national security threat to world peace. Mrs. Roscoe White had a third rifle pose picture in her possession. She said her husband had told her it would be very valuable one day. In late September 1963, Richard K. Nagel shot the ceiling of a bank to avoid being complicit. In 1974, he said under oath that he had been ordered to arrow the Patsy. On November 9, Igor Vaganov, or Cameron, calling himself Oswald, test drove a red Mercury Comet 70 miles per hour and said he would be able to buy in cash in a couple weeks. During the lunch hour on November 22, Michael Payne was discussing assassins with a co-worker at Bell Helicopter, and when he heard Alec had been captured with a gun, he remarked, "Stupid blankety blank, he is not even supposed to have a gun." The owner of the other Dallas school book depository was a Nazi racist, Russ Carlson. Before the JFK lunch setting and route had been published, this was an alternative triangulation of Crossfire site. At 12:29, the Hertz clock first shot was maybe from Mac Wallace, Texas School Book Depository 6'4" with a rifle, but there was a tree in the way, and it might have been a blank cartridge. The second shot was maybe Roscoe from the grassy knoll with a rifle, and it was the JFK neck wound and windshield, and Roscoe might have been Badge Man. The third shot was maybe Charles Harrelson, one of the tramp impersonators, from the Dow Tex building, 6th floor, with a rifle. The 4th floor maybe was Mertz, a.k.a. Sutre, from County Records building with a rifle, and it hit Teague at the overpass. The 5th shot was maybe Charles Rogers, one of the tramp impersonators, from the Dow Tex building, 3rd floor, with a pistol, and it caused a back wound. Maybe the 6th final frangible kill shot was Roscoe from the grassy knoll with a rifle. At 12:31, Billy and maybe Alec seen on the Texas School Book Depository steps. At 12:35, Billy, Buell, and Shelley take off to the railroad tracks, maybe to grab the grassy knoll rifle, then enter back of the Texas School Book Depository owned by D.H. Bird. At 12:40, after grabbing the sixth-floor rifle, Ozzie, Lee, or Billy come out the rear of the Texas School Book Depository, get in Payne's station wagon, or very similar, with Carl Mather's license plate, PE 3435, and Hispanic Joseph Walton Moore is maybe driving. He was the CIA Dallas Domestic Contact Officer. Could have been Moore and Billy or Gordon Novel in a look-alike car to assure that Cameron and Michael wouldn't talk. At 12:44, an APP is put out, maybe on the new and unofficial Channel 3, describing Alec's size and build, sort of. At 12:50, Payne's station wagon is seen at a 4340 West Davis service station with a shotgun in the back seat. At 12:52, Tippett is watching the Trinity River Viaduct as Alec passed. At 12:54, Tippett is at 8th and Lancaster. People saw Tippett or Weissman sitting in a car for 10 minutes. At 1 o'clock, a plainclothes police honk at Alec's boarding room, then drove away. Maybe Tippett dropped off Alec at the theater? The Top 10 record store is 1 block from the theater. Then Tippett drove to McRaven's location where Vaganoff was ready for the ambush. At 1:05, Alec enters the Texas Theater, owned by Nevada CIA Director Howard Hughes. At 1:06, both Ozzie Lee and Billy make scampers separately from Oak Cliff to the theater, one of them via the Jefferson Library. At 1:07, Tippett stops in front of Ann McRaven's house, 404 10th Street, and when he's coming out of the house, Tippett was maybe shot by a rifle by Igor from a distance. Zukowski calls Senator Thomas Dodd's juvenile probation branch in Conroe, Texas at 3:35 p.m. The FBI suspected Vaganoff might have had something to do with Tippett's death. He was in the U.S. Navy from 1959 to July 13, 1963. Vaganoff was at the Henry Olson Safe House, or girlfriend's location, until 12:30. Heard the news. Vaganoff left Sunset Apartments from 12:50 to 2:15, then returned and toured the Tippett and Kennedy murder scenes with Ann Zukowski till 3. At 4, FBI agents Hall and Abernathy showed up to interview him. At 1:10, Jack Ruby leaves the Dallas Morning News. 3 ambulances report Code 5 on Channel 1. At 1:13, Alec in the theater balcony buys a bag of popcorn on the main floor and either goes back upstairs or onto the main floor of the theater. At 1:15, Dr. Richard LaCoria at Methodist Hospital pronounces Tippett dead. Was Vaganoff seen in a long coat escaping the scene in a '62 Plymouth coupe? Mrs. Tippett was crying during the morning. Later on, she received $7,500 in insurance and $600,000 in donations. On December 23rd, she had a car accident incident, but there were no casualties. At 1:28, Rubenstein was seen at Parkland Hospital. At 1:35, Lee and or Billy ducked in through the front of the theater. The other went up the fire escape and was let in. The unidentified pregnant woman went up to the balcony and disappeared. Gerald Hill might have opened the balcony fire exit door. At 1:36, CIA front shoe store man Johnny Brewer called for an alert that suspect had entered the theater. At 1:42, Rubenstein appeared at the Carousel Club. Oklahoma Associated Press Bureau Chief at 1:45, Wilbur Martin, sitting in the front row, informed Patrolman McDonald where Alec was sitting. At 1:49, Billy was arrested in a white shirt in the balcony. He was winded from the scamper, was brought down the outside stairs, was driven away in the back alley by police, was never charged, and was brought to Lavelle's office, room 317. At 1:51, Alec was arrested in the third row from the rear, main floor, was taken out the front, was booed and hissed at like Jesus, on cue, and was booked. Why am I being arrested? The only thing I have done is carry a pistol in a movie. The plan maybe was to shoot him when he ran, but he didn't. At 1:56, Billy watched the DPD when Alec arrived and was brought into the building. At 2:02, Lee was seen in a white t-shirt and a red Ford Falcon, also with Carl Mather's license plate, switched cars in the last half hour, in the El Chico parking lot behind T.F. White's garage just north of the theater. At 2:05, Rubenstein calls his sister, Eva, from an unknown location. Ruth Hyde Payne, in the late afternoon, said to the detectives, "No search warrant? That's fine. Come on in." There was also a Marguerite altercation about money, money, money. Marguerite had called the Fort Worth Telegram and Bob Schiffer, and they brought her to Dallas. Around 2 a.m. the next morning, Henry N. Olson and his girlfriend had a meeting with Ruby. Part D. Bobby and LBJ, DPD, blackmail by police, by women, liking liars, and by some Jews. Bobby Kennedy was planning to expose LBJ's criminal activity in a Life article that was never published. JFK was planning to drop LBJ from the 1964 presidential ticket and replace him with Terry Sanford. The modus operandi of most women, of J. Edgar Hoover, and of some Jews possibly is to blackmail people as an effective course of action. Most of the Warren Commission's positive witnesses were maybe being bribed or blackmailed in some way or another by the DPD or by others. Officer Jefferson Davis Tippett's wallet was maybe planted as Alec Janso Heidel's wallet. The Jews were expelled from Great Britain in 1290 and from Nuremberg, Germany in 1499. The Catholic Nazi or Jew Pew charitable trusts started in 1948, the same year Israel became a country. There is also a Woodward Foundation, but there was no Gulf of Tonkin incident.